Hello everyone, my name is Rick Malero and I'm the principal of His Capital Group. And our organization has been doing business now for over 20 years. And to be honest, a lot has happened over the 20 years and we have adapted different strategies and different stages of the cycle. So today what I'd like to do is a Q&A to reintroduce you to what it is that we do as an investment company and how we help everyday investors achieve extraordinary results. That's a really good question. In fact, when I first started the real estate investment business, my main goal was to establish and build financial freedom. But what I realized very quickly is that as I started doing deals on my own, is that I made it all about Rick. And I realized that if I wanted to do something that was of significance, it needed to be much bigger than me. And so I decided to call it Home Investing Solutions. But the reason why I did that is because I wanted to remember that everything I did was for His glory. That's where the actual name His came in. Now, when we first started, we were doing wholesale deals, flipping properties, and a couple of rentals. But over the years, those strategies, based on different cycle changes, they evolved. And so we went from just being the flipper to becoming the landlord, to starting to do some small commercial properties. And then in the early 2012, we started testing private lending. And that's where the company really began to evolve, because as we started doing private lending on projects, we started getting access to opportunities we never even thought were available or possible. And so from the lending arm, we created opportunities for joint ventures, development projects, and even projects that were overseas. And so today we utilize our lending arm as the spear that helps us to lend money to other investors, to learn what's going on in the marketplace, and to adapt new strategies that are working and proven in the current market conditions. So our main mission is to invest with purpose. What I have realized over the years is that when I make it about myself, I have stress, I have headaches, and at the same time, it feels like my vision gets smaller and smaller. So what I've learned, instead of being self-centered, our main mission as a company is to be God-centered. And the more that we make it about God, the more that we are compelled to make a difference, not just make money. And so in our philosophy in our company is that every dollar that we earn has a face to it. So our main mission is to invest, allow those investments to produce a return, and from that return, reinvest in the community. Currently, for example, we're working on a project in Ukraine. We're helping children that have lost their family members in this war, and we're trying to help prevent human trafficking for them. And so that happens to be one of the missions that some of our projects are helping to finance. And you see, the bigger we get, the more opportunity we have to make an impact all over the world and also in the US. We're also in a board of a group called Feeding Children Everywhere, which is now US Hunger. And that organization is providing food and resources all over the US and also around the world. So again, we leverage partnerships with other organizations that are making an impact, and we tie our investments to that direct purpose. And so our mission is not only to do this, but also to inspire other investors to do the same. So one of my favorite strategies, as I said earlier, is private lending. We believe that private lending not only creates great partnerships and gives us passive income, but it gives us the opportunity to learn what's going on in the marketplace. So what makes us unique is that we kind of create a balance between what we call institution lenders and direct investors. And so because of the way we've grown over the years, we have the capacity to lend hundreds of millions of dollars through our institutional partnerships, but we're also a personal investor and we have experience like an investor. And so what that does is it allows us not only to lend money to investors that are flipping, doing ground up construction deals, or even doing buy and hold strategies, but we're able to mentor them and to warn them when we find deals that may have a red flag. And now those guys, you might be asking yourselves, why don't they just go to a regular bank? Well, in many cases they try, but the problem is your traditional banks finance what they call stabilized assets. So if an investor is bringing a property that is a mess that needs to be repaired, they can't finance those deals. So that means that that investor has to go find a private lender or a partner to put the money up so that they can do the repairs, fix it up, and then sell the house. Our business then creates the opportunity for other investors where we fund the deal on the purchase, but we also provide money for the repairs to make sure the property gets done right. And that gives these active investors the ability to grow and scale their businesses by leveraging our capital. So they win because they get a great return, and we win because we get passive income and we're secured by these awesome deals. And together, we create a machine that continuously grows and expands. Now, again, what's beautiful about what we do is because we connect with our clients. In fact, my average investor, active investor that borrows from me, he'll do at least 4 transactions a year with me. So we're able to build a relationship with our clients. We're able to identify their goals. And in many cases, we challenge those investors to level up. So let me give you an example. Some of these investors that are coming for funding, if they go to a traditional institution, that institution could care less about them. What they want is a new deal, they want to get their return on their money, and they want to move on. We, since we're not a monster institution, we're private lenders, we care about the relationship. So we might look at an investor and help them to do their 4 or 5 flips. I'm thinking right now even of a client of ours who started flipping. And then we challenged them to build cash flow. So the very next year, we funded his first short-term rental Airbnb. That property produced over $100,000 a year, and it started building passive income. And so over the years, we've helped them to grow and expand their portfolio so that now, 3, 5 years later, they're not just flipping deals. They're building homes, they have short-term rentals, and that's what really brings the value about what we do. We grow with our partners and our clients, and so our objective is to help to create an ecosystem that we all level up together. So this is really a great question. There are 2 types of investors in the industry. Okay, they're active investors. These are the people that are going out there, they're putting the time and the effort to find a distressed property or an asset, to stabilize it and make it produce. And then you have passive investors, which are individuals that are just looking to make their money work for them. Now, I think it's a very important piece that I want to challenge all of you watching today, is that every investor should be aiming towards building a passive portfolio. So technically, every active investor should be little by little developing savings and investing passively. Because at the end of the day, who do you think makes more money? The guy that's constantly hustling and grinding, or the guy whose money is working for him? That's the difference. So what I tell our clients, and we really try to cultivate this even with our borrowers, is we want to help you to grow your real estate business if you're active, so that you're making some good strategic profits. But then we want to challenge you to take some of those savings from the profits and reinvest them into passive income opportunities, so that over the next few years, an active investor can be diversified between active profit and passive income. And then of course, for our passive investors, they may already have a career, they may already have a job. What they're trying to do now is set themselves up so that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, the income that they're generating passively exceeds their monthly income, right? And so the beautiful thing about that is you don't need $10 million to retire. So for example, let's say that your monthly expenses to live are $7,000 a month. Well, if in the course of 10 years, you get to the place where you build enough cash that is producing every month, that the passive income pays that $7,000 a month, you are now financially free. Why? Because the interest or the cash flow is paying for your living expenses from the money that you've invested, which means that you can do whatever you want because every month that cash flow keeps coming. And so what we try to do is create a bridge for investors so they have access to both vehicles. We need the active investors to create these assets, but we also need the passive income so that we blend those together so that everybody can win and make money in the short term while also building passive income in the long term. You know, I remember when I first started investing, I used to think, man, I can make so much better of a return if I go and make this deal happen than if I just sit there passively and collect an 8, 10%, 12% return on my money. And to a degree, that was true. But you see, over the years, what I started realizing is that as a passive investor, I'm not putting time, money, and effort. I'm literally putting money to work for me. And so what I looked at is some of the most profitable deals that I was actively involved. While they were glorious and we made some good profits, if I had to go back and analyze how many hours of effort I put in, how many employees I paid, and all of the work that it took to make that deal happen, if I actually were to separate it, the return on investment for the money I put in would have been very similar if I would have just put it passively and done nothing, right? And so the reason why I say this is because there's a misconception that tells us that the active grind profit is a lot more attractive than the passive income. But here's what I've learned over the years. Passive income is the real key long-term to freedom. And most guys and gals that are trying to be active, when you ask them, why do you want to make all this money? What they usually tell you is because I want to buy my time. I want to be able to do what I want when I want. But here's the problem. If you're too busy being active, you never get the time to do what you want anyway. And so I think the biggest misconception in the marketplace is that when you're dealing with an active investor, people think that's the way to go. But the truth is, any investor should be aiming little by little to get to the place where their passive income exceeds their living expenses. And when you do that, that's when you truly reach the next level of wealth and financial freedom, because you don't have to work for your money is working for you. So again, our mission is to build passive income and to build partnerships, right? And so that means that what we're looking for is to be able to fund deals and opportunities that create a win-win scenario. But I also have to be cognitive and aware of the fact that I can't compete with a traditional bank. So technically, banks deal with consumer loans. And so what we do is we do the opposite. We work with only investment opportunities. So these are non-owner occupied properties or commercial deals, right? So when we fund these investors, typically the types of loans that we do are the guys that are doing buy, fix, and flip. They're buying a distressed house, they're gonna fix it up, and they're gonna sell it. In many cases, we also help those same customers who are evolving to buy, fix, but this time hold. And once the property is stabilized, then we leverage some of the institutional partners that we have to help them refinance with a 30-year mortgage. We also help investors to start building properties. And so there's a lot of infill lot building that is going on, and we are capital providers for those investors that are buying lots and building homes on those lots. We also do some small commercial deals. And so those are the core products that we finance. Now, of course, buy and hold can look like a million different ways. We have clients that we finance that are just doing a traditional long-term tenant. We have clients that we finance that then turn that into a short-term rental. We even have other investors that will buy, fix, and hold, and after we refinance, we find out later that they rented every bedroom, right? And so what's beautiful is that the funding options empower investors to adapt different strategies. And so as long as the investor is doing this for business purpose loans and the numbers make sense and we're able to analyze the deal correctly, that's when we can step in and provide them the capital they need to take that business to the next level. In this industry, it's all about setting the right expectations. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you. We work with a lot of referral partners. We also work with a lot of active investors. And many of those investors are what I call alpha males or females. These are people that wanna get it done, they wanna push forward. But we try our best to set expectations and to come alongside them to protect them, because I can't tell you how many times we have helped our investors by analyzing their deals when we're underwriting it, but we find red flags. And so what we want to do is tell the investor that we want a positive outcome. The deal has to be a win-win-win for everybody involved. And so whenever we analyze a deal, part of our transparency process is that we call out the things that are a risk, whether it's in a location that is dangerous, whether the renovation numbers seem to be deficient from what the market values of construction costs look like. There's a host of different risks. And as a lender, it is our responsibility to protect our passive investors, but also to protect our active investors. You have no idea how many times we have had active investors that we turned down the deal and we explained to them why. And later on, they either come back to us and said, "You were right, I lost my shirt," or B, "You were right, I almost walked into this landmine." And so that relationship gets stronger because they realize we're not just doing this to make money for ourselves. We're doing this to build a relationship long term. And so I think that's one of the biggest elements. The other part is we've integrated so much technology into our business. So we have digital underwriting tools that help us to assess the data. We're able to remove our emotions from the transactions by leveraging technology and really point out the facts. And we're able to collaborate with both our active and passive investors to make sure that the deals that we're funding create what we call the win-win-win. And even to the point now that for our clients that are borrowing money from us, we even provide them with a link of the list of conditions so that they can log in at any time. They can see what we need in order to finish a transaction, and they can literally upload the documents directly from there to make sure that our team has it so that we can complete the transaction as quickly as possible. So we have to remember that real estate is hyper-local. Even though the fundamentals may still work in different markets, not every market is the same. And so part of what our team does is they analyze, first and foremost, is this property near a market that has a lot of activity? We try to identify if it's a rural market or not. And the reason why I want to bring this up in this video is because about 60% of most of the institution's losses, meaning these are deals that they funded, later on they defaulted, and they actually lost money. So close to 60% of some of the portfolios that we have analyzed came from loans that were funded in rural markets. So that's a big red flag for us. Now, why is that the case? Well, the problem is when you take a look at a rural market, what you'll find is that they're typically in a market that doesn't have a lot of job growth. They're typically properties that are past 3 miles to get a comparable sale, which means that the population is really small. So whenever the market changes, typically those are the markets that get impacted the most, right? And so when we're analyzing a deal, we want to make sure that we understand where it's located, is there activity, are there enough comparable sales or comparable rental market numbers that are within a mile, right? And so we want to make sure we, as close as we can get to the location of the property, that's where we want to be. We also take a look at days on the market. We analyze the experience of the client. How many projects have they done? And so we go granular as well, but at the end of the day, you have to remember that when we're analyzing a deal, we have to also feel comfortable with the operator. Do we have a client that's done 10 of these in the same market? Well, that person is going to get more money than the guy who says, this is my first deal and my first deal in this market. So now we go into underwriting the borrower. Now, we've helped a lot of new investors to get started in the business, so that's not the issue, but how we help them is completely different than if we're working with a customer that's doing 10, 20, 30 of these deals a year. And so the lending aspect of it will go into the deal, the market, the risk, the repairs, the contractors that we're vetting to help them to make sure they don't lose money. But then it goes right into who the operator is. How many projects have they done? And by us creating that balance analysis, we're able to share feedback with our clients to make sure that they are prepared, equipped, and that they can execute on the projects. And I really believe that this process of co-underwriting with our borrowers is one of the most valuable tools and resources. And this is one of the reasons why our default rates are literally minuscule, because we've taken the work up front and we've analyzed the deal, we've analyzed the risk, and we've collaborated with our partners so that they're going in with eyes wide open. Okay, so this is kind of what I say. Let me go grab my crystal ball and tell you what's going to happen in the future. The truth, guys, is nobody 100% knows what's happening in the marketplace. But what we can do is we can do the research and we can look back in history to see what were the trends and what were the main strategies. It's incredible to see that the real estate cycle, it doesn't tell you when to buy. It shows you how to buy within each stage of the cycle. And what's really funny in today's market, a lot of people are talking about these new strategies of seller finance, subject to financing. Those are old terms that I was implementing 20 years ago, right? The difference is the cycle has shifted, and so there's different strategies that you can implement. So why do I say that? Because as a company looking to grow and expand over the next 10, 15 years, we have to have the foresight to know that some of these strategies will need to be nimble enough to adapt based on the market. That's one key thing. How do we do that? Well, first of all, we have to stay humble. We have to know that we have to always remain students of the game, because the moment we think we know it all, that's the moment that we're at risk for losing money. So that's part one. Part two is, because we lend money and we have so many great relationships, we're constantly in dialogue with clients to see what strategies are working and what markets are thriving. That's one of the ways that our company positions itself to implement strategies and implement investments in specific markets. So we're going to continue to do that. We also do something different than most. You see, most investors are what I call linear investors. They're one-dimensional. So they're doing flips and that's all I do. We, on the other hand, having seen this business shift over the years, we take it into a portfolio approach. And I typically use the fundamentals that I call the 40-40-20, which means that 40% of our time and our money is going to be allocated to what we call shorter-term gains. In a distressed market, that may look like flips. In other markets, that may look like building single-family homes, which we're doing right now. In other markets, that may also be building manufactured homes, or in some cases, even buying distressed mortgages. The other bucket is what we call cash flow. That 40% is essential because that's what keeps you afloat as the market shifts. How do we do that? Well, currently right now and for the next foreseeable future, we're going to be implementing strategies that allow us to earn interest payments, so it's passive, to look at different strategic rental properties, including renting some of the rooms instead of just the whole house. And of course, implementing some small commercial investments with triple net leases, because we see that as the future of commercial real estate as we see it right now. And the last one is what we call higher risk, high rewards. Now, for us, what is higher risk? Well, higher risk may be also diversifying into other countries in order to invest in projects that are signature projects that may give us triple the amount of value that we expected here in the US. Now, I obviously don't recommend everybody do this, but again, it is a higher risk, high reward strategy. So as long as we have the 40-40 working, that we can take that risk on the 20% and mitigate that risk by getting into the right projects. Some of those examples for us, Tulum, Mexico. We're in a golf course community right now, We're working on exclusive projects that are incredible short-term rentals, and we're trying to brand them with very well-known brands so that we increase the value of those projects. So for the next 10 years, 40, 40, 20, staying humble and being students of the game. Okay, so this is some advice that I would share with you after 20 years of doing this. First and foremost, it begins with your mind. How you think will impact how you feel, which will motivate how you act, which will generate a result. So literally focus on what you're thinking. And if you want to change the strategy and you want to change and grow, then you need to change the input. So start putting the things that are going to change your mindset so that you can grow. So that's input one. Part two, and I think this is also equally as important. You are who you hang out with. That's a fact. So if you want to be successful, ask yourself, is my inner circle a circle that's connected with people that are of like mind, that are pursuing to be successful or already are? If the answer is no, then you know what you have to do. You need to upgrade your inner circle. I think that's an essential part. And the last part, and I've honestly learned that this is such a powerful piece. If you really want to thrive and be successful, stop thinking just about yourself. Most people literally are so self-centered that they have no room for any growth. And so if you want to grow, you have to humble yourself, empty yourself, and go into something much bigger. For me, I've realized that if I make God the source, not Rick, then my entire approach to business, my entire approach to how I raise my children, and how I even deal with my relationships is completely changed because I'm looking to serve them. And so the more you become less self-centered and more God-centered, the more you will find more fulfillment and success in anything that you do. So for those of you that have been following us now for over 20 years, a lot has changed since we started. But what's incredible is that there's so much more room for growth and so much more opportunity. So we thank you. And for those that just found out about who we are, we welcome you to the family and we look forward to cultivating a lasting relationship with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it was valuable to you. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. And also, if you have some additional tips or strategies that you want us to cover with real live action projects that we fund, feel free to put those in the comments. We look forward to sharing with you more content. Until we meet again, don't forget to invest with purpose.